book friends, what's up? How are you? Thanks for stopping by for today's video. Today's video is on the book When the Storm Breaks by Emery Rose. Emery is one of my very favorite, at the top of the list, authors. I stumbled upon her very first book. Actually, I didn't stumble upon it. I won it several years ago. Oh, Macy's getting comfortable over here. You probably hear her shifting around. I won it, in a giveaway in a group, and it took me a couple months to read it, and I loved it. I was shocked that it was her first book, and I was shocked how quickly I connected to her writing. And ever since then, I have been such a fan. I've read everything that she has written, and I will continue to do so. Her words just hit me straight in the heart. And I love that her stories are real and thoughtful, soulful, fluid. I just read them and I feel like I'm at home in them. And I think that it really says something when you connect to a story like that, because her stories, she keeps moving around. Her stories are all different, but they're all love stories. So there's that connection, but they're all very different. And this is now her third series, and I just love them. I could gush and go on and on and on about how my heart loves her stories. I was very excited to read When the Storm Breaks. I've done a video on all of her books. I will, of course, include them in the... Macy, are you comfortable now? I will, of course, include the videos in the description box below. She also has her own playlist on my channel, so make sure you go and check those out. I will also say that this is book 2 in the Love and Chaos series. I think it's Love and Chaos. If it's not, I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure it's Love and Chaos series. The first book was When the Stars Fall. Wow. I cried a lot in that book. That book takes you through the ringer. When the Stars Fall was the first book, like I mentioned, and it was building the world that we were going to be in with these characters. It was about Jude and Lila. Yeah, I mean, I just go watch the video because wow. And so we met Brody in that book, and I was intrigued by him because he was just so different from Jude in the book. And Jude and Brody are cousins, and he was just so different in the book. Honey, just relax. And you couldn't really get your hands around him, really. There was a big question mark about him. And so when she said that she was writing the next book about him, I was like, okay, I'm so intrigued. And because it's her book, I was excited to see what Brody was going to be like. He's a man of few words. He continued to be a man of few words. And so I wanted to get to know him deeper. Boy, did we ever in this book. So When the Storm Breaks is about Shiloh and Brody. I have to put a shout out to Emery for the playlist. You know, I always love when there's a playlist associated. You get the feel for the book. There were some songs on this playlist that I just was like, wow, okay. Not only did they go with the story perfectly, but I could pick out the parts of the book. One of my favorite songs ever, Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, is on the playlist. Fire Away by Chris Stapleton is on the playlist. When I saw that, and I read the playlist before I read the book, and then I went back and looked over the playlist again, and I was like, oh my gosh, listen to that song because it's perfection for Brody and Shiloh. With or Without You by U2 is on it. Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. Oh my gosh. And then also I'm Still Here by Sia, in addition to a few other songs. So I highly recommend you go and listen to the playlist as well. As I mentioned, the book is about Shiloh and Brody. Let's talk about Shiloh for a little bit. Shiloh LaRue is her name, and I adored her. She's in her middle 20s. She's a rock star. On her own, she has left the band that kind of made her famous. That band had her brother and her boyfriend in the band, and she just needed to go on her own for a lot of reasons. She comes to town where Brody lives in Texas for some pretty serious reasons, looking for something. I won't go into it because that's a spoiler. But that's what makes her go to the town and meet Brody. She is intuitive. She is soulful. She is an old soul. She has been around the block with life in a way that in her young 25 years makes her have a certain outlook on life that I really connected to. And also the whole intuitive part. I thought it was really interesting that something that Emery writes about in this book is Shiloh's relationship with her grandmother, how her grandmother was kind of a seer. And if you believe in that kind of stuff, which I do believe in that stuff, there's some base level energy that I believe people have, I believe situations have, I believe that you can tap into that as an intuitive person, and Shiloh is that way. So right away, I was like, I get her 100%. Interesting thing about her brother Landry and her ex-boyfriend Dean, who is Landry's best friend, that's part of where she grew up really fast. And her connection and her relationships with Landry and Dean very much made her the person that she is at her young age. And it's interesting, she says that the men in her life know how to break things, not fix them. It tells you a lot. There has been a little bit of time that has passed since When the Stars Fall. Brody is living on a ranch. He is rescuing horses. He is training horses. He is in his element. Brody himself, he, like I said, is a man of few words. He's a little surly. He's, what do they call him? The asshole cowboy. He just kind of tells things like it is and doesn't really care if he spares your feelings, but he's also a truth teller. And it was something that I really liked because Shiloh is very much that way. Neither one of them sugarcoats anything. They both go with their gut a lot in life. And so far, it has not steered them wrong. Brody, though, he just, I don't want to say he had to prove something because he didn't have to prove anything to me. I just wanted to get to know him better. He's not the alpha hole that some books have, you know, as the main character. That's not Brody. Even though I said he's an asshole cowboy, that's not him. There's more to him, and he just doesn't feel the need to tell everybody about it. He likes his life the way it is. He's not looking for anything. He just is. And there was something really peaceful about that I felt like with him. He had nothing to prove in life and no one to prove it to. And I hope that makes sense. That part of his personality really spoke to me. Okay, I've now let Macy out of the room because she would not sit still. And now you're going to hear her because she loves to bark at everybody. So I apologize in advance for that. I hope it's not too distracting. So like I said, Shiloh comes to town because she's looking for something in particular. And she stays in Brody's guest house on his ranch. His Aunt Kate, who of course we know from the previous book. Let me just mention that I loved that we got to see all the McAllisters. I just felt like I was part of the family since this was the second book. I love being able to see characters from previous books in like the next book in the series, of course. And I really highly recommend that you read When the Stars Fall, because it will give you so much more insight into when the storm breaks. But I digress. Shiloh comes to town and is actually staying at Brody's guest house. He rents it out, kind of like an Airbnb type thing. And so she's staying there and he has to go pick her up from the airport. They don't know each other. He's just doing her a solid by going to pick her up. So when they meet, I always love that first part. And these were some of the things they said about each other. This is what Brody says about Shiloh. Vivian Shaw, she said, finally answering a question I'd forgotten I asked, in the same throaty voice from the phone. Sexy, gravelly, it reached deep inside and rattled my bones. Not what you'd expect to hear coming out of this girl's mouth. She was all of 5'3" or 4", and underneath the baggy sweatshirt, I suspected she was small and thin. She was young, early 20s if I had to guess, but her eyes looked older, like they'd seen the world and it hadn't always done right by her. And then this is what Shiloh says about Brody. Who is it? I'd had too many groupies and creepers show up outside my door to open it to just anyone, and there was no peephole to tell me who my caller was. Brody. Brody. My lips curved into a small smile as I opened the door. He wore faded denim, dusty work boots, and a sweat-stained gray t-shirt tight enough to show the ripples and dips of his chiseled abs. I was mesmerized by his broad shoulders, bulging biceps, and the sheen of sweat on his suntanned skin. He was so deliciously masculine. Hey, cowboy. Viv. Viv. He'd already shortened my alias. His gaze roamed from my face and down, slow as you like, taking in my silky, pearl gray camisole and matching short set trimmed in black lace. When his whiskey browns finally returned to my face, it felt like he'd branded every inch of my skin and left a trail of heat in his wake. Enjoying the view? It'll do. He chuckled at my raised brows. It'll do? What a charmer. They are attracted to each other from the get-go. And something that I really felt in their book was it wasn't like a meet cute situation. It wasn't like insta-love. There was a slow burn to them that's a little hard for me to describe because they are fire, most certainly. But there's this element of them knowing that when they connected and they met, it was on like an elemental level that they didn't feel the need to rush to the intimacy. There was already a level of intimacy the minute they met. So while all of that waiting for that first kind of initial part, you know what I mean? I was very satisfied. I wasn't like, oh my God, like get to it already. No, not at all. Because I felt their connection, like right away. And although I couldn't wait to get to the heat and the steam, there was this level, and the only word I can think of is intimacy and closeness that they exuded with each other that just had me swooning and just so in love with the build. You know what I mean? The build of when we get to that part, that first kind of, part, I was enjoying the ride we were on until we got there. There was many really touching moments in this book, but these moments that I felt like they might have been really simply written, but very profound in how I felt about their relationship and how Emery was writing their relationship. There's at one point where Shiloh says to Brody, I think you're too hard on yourself. You're only human. And he was like, darn, you figured that out about me. And it was like, yes, she did, Brody, and you are too hard on yourself, And then there was another moment where she's talking to her grandmother that has passed away, who she was very close with and lived with. She says, I found him. As sure as I know my own name, I found him. And she's talking about Brody. She knows and he knows because it's dual perspective. So we're getting chapters from both of them the whole time that this is the person they're supposed to be with. But oh my gosh, she's a rock star who travels the world and loves that part of her. And he loves that part of her. But yet his life is in Texas, on his ranch, doing his work, which is training horses and rescuing horses. And he's really good at it. And he's good with that. He's not going to be the guy that travels the world. And she's not going to be the girl that is going to be okay not living her dream and putting her music out there. Ugh. But yet here they are. And how are they going to figure that out? Brody gets that she needs to have that outlet with her music. And he hadn't heard her before, but then he decides he's going to listen to her music. And this is what he says. Fueled by coffee, I cranked up the volume on my music and listened to Shiloh LaRue all the way from Cypress Springs to Abilene. I'd never been one to get starstruck. I knew celebrities were just people, no better or worse than the rest of us. But I'm not going to lie. It blew my mind that the bluesy rock voice blasting from my speakers came from the same girl who helped me birth a foal last night. The same girl I'd skinny dipped with in the lake and ate lunch with on the tailgate so she could see my wild horses in action. I listened to Acadian Storm's music too. Whenever Dean the Douche Bouchon was the lead singer on a track, it pissed me off. But I listened anyway. Even when Shiloh was singing the backing vocals, I could still hear her voice loud and clear. By the time I got to Abilene, I felt like I knew Shiloh on a more intimate level than I had before. If her lyrics were a reflection of what she wanted and needed in her life, one thing was blindingly clear. Shiloh was looking for someone to love her. Oh my gosh, yes, Brody, and you are that man. Ugh. They go through it in this book in ways that actually surprised me. Because like I said, I had no idea what we were going to get with Brody. But they go through it. And it's not just the stuff that I kind of thought Emery was laying little Easter eggs about. It completely shocked me what came and created turmoil in their budding love story. I was wholly surprised at all that. But what was really cute was that everyone around Brody knew that he was falling in love with her. He himself was just kind of like surprised about it. Like he knew that like this was the girl, like, but to actually say those words, like I'm falling in love with her, was a lot for him. But it was cute that everyone else in his life was pointing it out to him. This is what he says. At that moment, I knew this was what falling in love really felt like. It was fast and furious and hit you like the force of a effing Mack truck. My breath seized in my lungs. Shit, this couldn't be good. There were parts in this book that I cried. There were parts in the book where I swooned. There were parts that made me so mad and angry. And the book took a turn at a place where I thought we were going to go straight. So the interesting thing about the book is that, and this is my own personal opinion, of course, we do get a happily ever after in this book. It's very Brody and Shiloh style. And I was okay with that. I was good with that because Emery does not shy away from tough subjects in this book that they both go through. There is, the death of parents. There is making decisions in your life that completely change the trajectory of your life. There is leaving what's comfortable and what you know, even though it's not good for you, and having the strength to leave and go and forge a path on your own. There's coming to terms with your relationship with people that are supposed to be like your family and your close friend, and knowing that maybe they don't have your best interests in heart and you've got to separate yourself because they're toxic. And also there's making your peace with certain situations in your life, because if you want those people in your life, you just have to deal and figure it out. But there was light at the end of their tunnel, and that's where the happily ever after comes in. And I did want, I wanted just a smidge more for them, but I was totally good with where Emery left it. I hope that Brody and Shiloh continue to be in the next book. I'm not sure who that next book is going to be about. I'm hoping there's going to be a next book. As I say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, is there going to be who else are we going to talk about here? There are other McAllister brothers. You guys, I can't stress enough that if you're sleeping on Emery Rose's books, you got to get with the program, because you will love her stories. I promise you, you have to read them. And if you have read them, let me know which ones you've read in the comment section below, and if you have a favorite. Don't forget, I include a direct Amazon link to the book in the description box below. So if you want to grab the book, it's right there for you. I always welcome you to come over to my social media, which is Kat Reads Romance on Facebook and Instagram, and say hello to me over there. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I'll see you very soon. Bye.